I need like hair. Oh, there's one yeah, I was expecting things. Right, yeah. No, I mean, I'm looking out here. I don't have any. Okay. Oh, it's not like a thing.
In a good way. Yeah, that's because that's because of all clear.
Yay. There we go. Thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah, so whenever you, click into the, just, invite it to you, just simply click in and log in, and what it'll do is, it'll record us, and it'll record your slides at the same time.
Oh, got it.
Audio of your talk and the slides at the same time.
Okay.
And that way you can see what you did. And we just get stuff for people who attend the motion.
Okay, so then they'll be, you guys will see.
We have to put it through a program that talks about all the talking you do.
Okay.
And then all the.
Yeah, you did? All my questions.
Yeah, that is all we'll do. So, yeah, let me know if you have any problems. I should be able to see you log in.
I think I'm trying to get this.
You may probably hear the chime, right? So, yeah.
Anyway, I'm doing number 3. About,
Gotcha. You're in that house.
Okay. So do you want me to say share screen? Nope, you don't even have, oh, I don't have to do that.
You record on.
Actually, yes, share screen.
Oh, but they have them, the real world, right, yeah. But it is real too.
I got it. Yep, perfect. It'll share the big.
Yep, and so that's what I think is, yep, that's perfect. I can see your slides.
Okay.
wow, thank you. That's class, you know. He's a really good contact for us, and Ellen will be working. Yeah, so you might want to keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yes, perhaps doing
Like a
I'm just gonna grab some.
Germany. Started doing profiles of the different software here.
I'm
But it's important for the same you just point out the board people because that's what's powering the work session. So just try to Tasteful? Thank you. I grew up there. It's the best place on earth. Well, of course, no, it's just this thing is, yeah. Is anybody sitting here? No. Okay. Yeah, I think just wait for okay. So, introduction. Okay. Kirsty had mentioned that yeah. That's like on Earth. It kind of is. How about you? I work in the library. Oh, it's in my desk. I'm the Hayden Library, so the best one. I'm in the department where the librarians go out as liaisons to different departments. The physics librarian goes out. We have a librarian. Yes, Sophia. Tell her you said something. It's pretty new, so she'll be happy to hear that.
Yes, no mention. It was, I think it was Mark who said this was illustrating. I was so excited when I met her. Excited.
Great.
Okay. But for some reason, I didn't make a CD. CD has to be it.
She's sort of the liaison to civic medium lab. One of them. So we have several. It's pretty interdisciplinary.
She's great. For people ask me, I mean, I'm from Mexico, and I just moved here for the last me what friends between sort of my university background and my theater.
Oh my God, yeah.
I made the library, like the MIT.
Wow.
It's like sort of gifted to me give this one service.
No,
Anyway, how long have you been working? This year?
Like 20 years in garage.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because civics has what else I'm like, and to be, I like it better, but I think that's what
Together
thanks for coming.
Yes, that's right. Those are my. What's your
that
I like to hear it too late.
yeah, I don't about this.
I know there's art at a yard sale, but apparently it's some reason that I don't know. I always get a big reaction though. What? Yeah. You guys go here or go drink this?
I work down the hall.
Yeah, you know what?
I work down the hall and it's kind of interesting.
Oh, cool. Nice. No, I'm from California.
Oh, awesome.
Cool out there.
Catherine's my advisor at Diversity Group.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. I read what she wrote in the Civic Media book.
Yeah, I'm in the civic media art.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Brilliant.
You what?
She's brilliant.
Oh, great. Great. I'm inspired.
What are you doing here?
And there's no science. So, I'm a performing artist, but I also am an anthropology student, so USC.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. I do. I've been working part-time, at school.
So we've got
Work.
go.
Entertainment. So, I haven't like fully experienced it, but yeah, it's
Some of it, right?
yeah. I mean, they have so much cool stuff going on. I mean, in that civic media book, they have a lot of coverage there too. So yeah, it's been really cool. Yeah. And what are you working on right now?
I haven't met many artists who are like the technology people. I'm working, finishing my thesis over there on data literacy, but for library in public libraries.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. What kind of things did you guys find?
Like different kinds of hands-on craft activities.
Oh, nice.
Like in the and data, so like gummy bears and two big network.
Yeah.
Using emojis to create a bar graph.
Yeah.
So that's like really a production department.
Yeah. You gotta speak to them in their language.
I know, right? Yeah. And then there's right? There's the scores.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, always. Exactly.
I was like, once I found out which place is together. To get started.
Hi, my name is Alex Chazanoff. I'm a postdoc in the program in information science and the MIT Library. And standing in for Micah Altman, who is maybe in Germany or maybe transatlantic.
I'm thinking he's over the Atlantic right at the very moment.
Right at this very moment.
Yeah, he was supposed to be here last night, and then there was something with the staff problem on plane, so he's not here.
That means. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to introduce our speaker today. And one thing to note is that we are recording this session. So I've been advised that if you can see this little yellow, very cute creature, it can probably see you. So do with that information. Just briefly, we're going to have a Q&A afterwards as well. So if you can hold your questions till the end, that would be great. So this is Catherine D'Ignazio.
Yeah, any way.
Catherine is an assistant professor at the Civic Media and Data Visualization, or a professor of Civic Media and Data Visualization at Emerson College, a principal investigator at the Engagement Lab, and a research affiliate at the MIT Media Lab and Center for Civic Media. She holds an MFA from Maine College of Art, an MS from the Media Lab, and a BA from Tufts University. And today she's going to talk to us about creative data literacy, bridging the gap between the data haves and the have-nots. So, welcome.
Thanks so much.
So thanks so much. It's a great crowd. I am going to try to project because we don't have a mic. I think it should be fine though, but just if at any point as I'm talking and folks in the back cannot hear me, just raise your hand, tell me to speak up. So I'm really pleased to be here. I'm also really pleased to have some of the work that I'm doing increasingly intersect with librarians and information science. So this is me. Alex just introduced me. Mainly I spend my time at Emerson College teaching students in I come from art, communication, and journalism backgrounds, how to do analysis of data and storytelling with data. And that's, doing that work is what's inspired a lot of this sort of thinking about how do we think about data literacy, and we're talking about data literacy, for whom do we mean data literacy? Sort of my main space that I'm at is a applied research lab called the Engagement Lab, where we study and create technologies for civic engagement. And so we actually collaborate a lot with the MIT Center for Civic Media to share lots of people, students, lots of projects there. Okay, so I'm going to dive right in because our time today is limited, and I really want to have time for questions and discussions. I'm curious about kind of the different, to hear where you all are coming from and the different positions from which you see possibilities and challenges for data literacy. But so we're in this particular moment right now, and I think what's somewhat different about this present moment is the way in which data has gone mainstream. And so part of what makes this possible is advancements in technology, right? So we are at this moment in time able to store, process, and analyze more data than we ever have been able to in the past. And so this has then been accompanied by processes of datafication. Datafication being the taking of sort of the capturing of physical phenomena into and translation of that into digital streams. So for any of us who own like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or any of these things that are like these personal health trackers are things that quantify our steps, they datafy our steps, they take sort of physical information and turn that into digital information, into data. There's money to be made, increasingly more and more money. You may have heard this thing, data is the new oil. You can look at also which companies are succeeding on the internet right now. If you think about what is their business, well, actually, I would say their main business is advertising, but it's data. It's data-driven advertising, right? So you think about like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and so on. But then the mainstreaming has also happened through the media in terms of the representations of data that we see. So these are just some of those kinds of examples. We've seen a huge rise in data journalism, new creative modes of reporting and doing storytelling with data. We have personal dashboards, so we're being kind of conditioned into, like, we see ourselves as being generators of data. We look at our Fitbit data, we look at our health tracking data, we look at other data about our actions. There's been the open data movement, so we see an increasing sort of push in the government sector towards publishing data, and then a kind of increasing valuing of being data-driven in decision-making processes for government. And so all of this is like this sort of thing of data, like the data analyst used to be just an analyst. It's now called a scientist, right? And so there's been this elevation of data that's kind of almost to the point where it's become kind of fetish. That I think we need to think about and think about who is able to work with these new tools. If these represent these kind of huge advances in technology, in our capabilities, who's able? Because we have to remember William Gibson's great quote. So William Gibson, the science fiction writer, says, "The future is already here." And certainly at MIT is a place where like the future is already here at MIT. It's just not very evenly distributed. So there's emerging critiques of the new data-driven knowledge regime that point out that who is collecting and storing and analyzing data is very different from the people that are collected and stored and analyzed in the databases. The terminology of data have and have not, that actually comes from Dana Boyd and Kate Crawford's early kind of critique of big data. Scholar Mark Andreevich has talked about the big data divide, and scholars in open data are starting to talk about the growing inequality in who has the know-how and the technical chops to make sense of all of the available data that is out there. So although we aspire, in many cases, the availability of data by itself, we kind of think like this is more democratic, right? It's out there. What happens is there's this huge gap between like just putting it somewhere and then people actually being able to meaningfully use stuff. So there's a variety of aspects that contribute to this kind of data inequality. These are 4 of them that actually my colleague and I have outlined in a paper. But they have to do with looking, so when you think about data inequality, what are we talking about and how do you kind of analyze such a thing? This involves looking across this whole data ecosystem and interrogating at every step who has access, who has power, who makes money, and who doesn't make money. And so what we see is that people that are making out well in this new data-driven knowledge economy are the corporate internet giants. They're the data brokers, of which there's like an increasingly sort of complex ecosystem of data brokers, people that just exclusively buy and sell data. And then, of course, federal government agencies like the NSA. But then those at the bottom are the individual entities whose data is often collected, combined, stored, and used to produce insight and money, yet those people reap little in the way of knowledge or benefit from it. And then another aspect of data inequality that I think is discussed slightly less, but this is in a way unsurprising one, is that the people who are working with data are not representative of the population as a whole, either in the country or in the globe. So it's probably not surprising that women and people of color are underrepresented in data science, just as they are in all STEM fields. The surprising and sad, terrible thing about the problem is that it's getting worse. And so a study by the American Association of University Women found that women comprised 35% of computing and mathematical occupations in 1990. So 35, this dropped to 26% in 2013. And this is despite the fact that women are increasingly in the labor force, and they're even increasingly the breadwinners for their families. So here, there's a much higher probability that discrimination will be hard-coded into data sets and into intelligence systems if the people that are doing that coding are the most privileged and the least equipped to acknowledge and deal with issues of inequality and inequity. So not to mention the fact that, of course, different bodies ask different questions and pursue different lines of inquiry. So we're leaving out a whole set of rich and interesting research questions that we might otherwise be able to ask and answer with data. Okay, so that's just to kind of set up, like, this is the sort of backdrop, and it's a politicized backdrop in a certain way in which we teach data literacy. So how do we teach data literacy in the context of like a kind of basic situation of inequality that I think we have to acknowledge when we teach about data? And so I don't know about you all, but I really want to take seriously some of the aspirations of the open data movement, that it might empower citizens. I want to take seriously the aspirations of data journalism, that it might enable greater transparency to the public on issues that really matter. And I even want to take seriously some of the pre-Web 2.0 internet aspirations that peer-to-peer and grassroots sharing of information could be a method of emancipation for people who have not traditionally had access to power. So I want to take those seriously, but the basic inequality of these systems, of data collection, data sharing, data analysis, data meaning making, is something that we can't really ignore. And so it makes the context, it creates a context in which any act of teaching with data is political, not in the sense that it's like Republican or Democrat, but it's political in the sense that we have to acknowledge differential power within the system. And so here, a great person to sort of help situate us in relationship to those power differentials is the great Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire. And he pioneered an approach to literacy education, like reading and writing, in Brazil, called popular education. And so in popular education, literacy is not only about technical skills. It's not just the mechanics of like how you recognize a word or pronounce a syllable, but it's also about what he calls the emancipation achieved through the literacy process. So in his book, in the famous book, it's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he says, education either functions as an instrument which is used to facilitate integration of the younger generation into the logic of the present system and bring about conformity, or it becomes a practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to participate in the transformation of their world. So when we teach about data literacy in the context of inequality, we can either teach them a way of working that perpetuates the status quo, which is not a good one, or we can teach them how to creatively and critically engage with these tools such that they can change the status quo. Okay. And so Paulo Freire and popular education, we might want to think about what is a critical data literacy for empowerment. Like, what does that look like? And also, like, what are we even talking about when we're talking about data literacy? So data literacy is not just the stuff on the left. So, like, these are like the technical skills. It's not just, it might include some of these things, but it's not just about, some technical chops of like, can I code or not, or like, can I make a pivot table in Excel? And it's also somewhat different from, but I think can borrow a lot, hopefully, from these prior literacies that have come before and that actually have much more robust and rigorous definitions than data literacy. But I think we can learn from all these things, but it is slightly different from all these other kinds of literacies that are here. So what else is it about? And the thing that I'm not going to do in this presentation is give you a definition, because this is where I want to point you, though, because there are people who are starting to think about definitions, and just in the special issue of the Journal of Informatics, released a special issue on data literacy that actually Rahul and I have a paper in here, and there are a number of papers in here, and indeed the editor's introduction actually talks through some of the definitions of data literacy, and even acknowledges that we are not at the point yet where we have a good, rigorous definition, and maybe that's okay. So they kind of land on the standpoint of, at the moment, this is a very emerging stage, and we need to kind of do more experimentation in this space before we settle down. So let's see what I want to say here. I'll just move on from there. So instead of offering a definition, what I want to offer is 5 pedagogical strategies. Good example. For thinking about how do we teach creative data literacy for empowerment purposes, and then show you a number of examples of work that is striving to do this kind of thing. So these strategies come from practice. So these are not kind of all-encompassing sort of definitions and theories. These are emerging from below, from practice, and from doing lots of experimentation with and practice with folks like the journalists and artists and communicators that I teach at the undergraduate and graduate level. I've also run workshops for over 500 people in municipal government, policymakers, the nonprofit sector, the digital humanities, the arts. And so these strategies are focused on data literacy for people who do not consider themselves techies, so who don't come from a quantitative background and often have a kind of a trepidation when they start thinking about themselves as being people who could work data. So I'm just going to go through these one at a time. And so this is what I'll be curious to talk about with you all. I mean, we're in a very kind of highly specific context, but it'd be interesting to see what populations you all may work with, see if any of these strategies may translate into those, into your audiences. The first one, so I think we've found over and over again in workshops, is this idea that working with community-centered data, when you're teaching about data, working with data that is centered on and meaningful to the community is extremely important. So thinking about, does the data set that you're teaching with have some relevance? And I'll show you an example of what is not relevant. How many people, anyone here use R? MIT, someone must know R. Okay, so R is a statistical analysis package. The thing that drives me crazy about a lot of data science classes that teach R is that they're always using this data set called MT-CARS, which is, it has different things about car performance, so like miles per gallon, power, placement, and a bunch of different other factors. And so they use this over and over again. I've seen this in numerous sort of webinars, online courses, tutorials, sort of static web tutorials. And this is what I say, like, this is a quick way to alienate your audience, right? Because unless we actually come to this data having some sort of understanding of how car works, just made me a host of the meeting. Kelly, I'm right here. Okay, I think we're back. I don't know, WebEx just did something. So unless you're actually like a car mechanic or a car salesperson or you love cars, like that's totally cool if you do. But you know, for the rest of us who are not car specialists, this data means very little to us. So like when we then are like studying a scatter plot of miles per gallon displacement, like we don't know what this means. We have no title for what this is. And so this is a mistake I think people make over and over again. But here's an example of where I think the educators got it really right. So this is actually out of Sarah Williams's data design lab, and it was a collaboration with Center for Urban Pedagogy and CUNY. It was a project called Local Lotto. So in 2014, this partnership of folks came together, and they used the theme of the state lottery to teach mathematical concepts of data analysis and probability. But they posed a very specific question to these teenagers who lived in urban Brooklyn neighborhoods, and they said, is lottery good or bad for your neighborhood? Right? And so they asked them, you guys have to, you know, this is like your line of inquiry. You all have to figure this out. We're going to give you some of the tools to help you do that. And so they did both quantitative analysis, they learned concepts of probability. They went around the neighborhood and they interviewed people. They did observational studies. They did kind of this like quantitative and qualitative analysis. And then they had to connect their arguments to whether the lottery was good or bad for their neighborhood to the data that they have collected and the data sets that they have been provided, and use concepts of probability to answer the question. So it's like grounded in their everyday experience. It values the experience that they bring as sort of expert residents of these neighborhoods. It acknowledges that these students actually have a lot to offer this equation. They have all these relationships with people in their neighborhood. They can so interview them and also see what they think about the lottery. So this is one where I think the sample data was right on. Similar vein. In a similar vein, something called the RAP Research Lab is a program that's run out of Ivy, which is an art and technology space in New York City by Tahir Kemko. And so Tahir is an artist, and he has assembled a database of over, I think, 50,000 different songs, different rap lyrics, rap and hip hop. And this is an after-school program that works primarily with youth of color, immigrants, females, and transgenders. They work only with this one data set, but they use hip-hop lyrics, something that the students relate to, that they have a feel for, that they have kind of intuitive knowledge and experience of, and use that to teach concepts like network analysis, spreadsheet analysis, quantitative text analysis. And so, again, starting from acknowledging that the people who are learning have something relevant to contribute, and acknowledging their experience. Okay, but being audience and community centered doesn't mean you have to go a whole invent a whole new program. It could be just really as simple as carefully considering what sample data you provide in your application or the visualization, and thinking about whether it's culturally appropriate for your audience and whether your community cares. So this is what led Rahul and I to choose lyrics, music lyrics, as a kind of entry-level point for our school, Data Basic, which tries to teach, I'll come back to that in a minute, but tries to teach basic principles of data analysis and storytelling. But start from a standpoint of popular music lyrics, almost everybody who's English-speaking is going to have had some experience with some of these artists. Is going to know what a song sounds like. Is going to have a sense for what, Madonna looks like, or maybe Lady Gaga looks like. So we bring a lot to the table with this kind of sample data. Okay, second thing, write data biographies. So often when we come to data, more and more, there's this issue that we come to data, we find data in the wild. So on the one hand, this is great. There's APIs, there's portals, thanks to the open data movement. There are test data sets for network analysis, machine learning, social media, image recognition. There's newsletters of data sets that you can subscribe to. This would all appear to be a really good thing, and I think it is in general. But the problem here is that we encounter these data sets in a kind of decontextualized context. So you come up on these things and you're just like, I don't know, food inspections for the city of Boston, or social network data randomly from Facebook. And what's often missing from a lot of these data sets is any kind of context. why did the institution collect it? Who's using it within the institution? What things did they not include? What are the limitations of the data set, the known limitations? Every data creator knows what the limitations of the data set are. Most of the open data that's published online, you have no idea what those things are. And so, but increasingly, we have these use cases coming out of different sectors where this is how people are encountering data. So data journalists, often the mandate in data journalism, find data, combine it with other data, and do interesting, creative, sort of investigative reporting on it. Entrepreneurs are looking to potentially build apps and services on various kinds of open data. Researchers, citizens, artists, and so on. So the problem here is that, the separation of the data from the creators and then from the people who are actually making meaning from it creates a pretty big gap. And often the gap here is like sort of metadata, context, limitations. And so one of the things I think to sort of counteract that and to also reinforce this idea that data is human, it's created by human beings. Even when it's collected by a machine or something, somebody has put that process into motion and has invested resources from a human standpoint, material resources go into the production of data. And so when we think about the sort of data process, we often think about, okay, acquire the data, like clean it up, analyze it, present it. But when we encounter data in the wild, we often need to go backwards in time and do the biography of the data, particularly when that information is not provided to us. So thinking about who collected the data, how, for what purpose, how is it used, what are the impacts, what are the known limitations. And so this is something that I've been having students do in classes, and they produce some very interesting results, and they kind of try to dig in and get the biography behind how did a data set come to be in the world. And then I think there's interesting experiments going on in the open data space for what sort of data biographies can look like. So better attempts to create better metadata to help give context to data sets. So one that I think is really excellent is the Pittsburgh 311 Data User Guide. It's just a Google Doc. Like, it doesn't need to be fancy. But it goes through, here's who created this data set, here's how it's stored, like even sometimes, like here's like our database, here is our, processing system, here's how often we sync these two things, here are the known limitations, here's how the city uses the data. This goes a huge, long way into contextualizing data for these people that then come later on down the line. Okay. Third pedagogical strategy is making data messy. So this may sound counterintuitive because when we're always talking about data, we're always being like, this clean the data. We're always talking about like, oh my God, we gotta like clean this stuff up. We gotta like make it tidy and clean and put it in like rows and columns and so on. But thinking about, this kind of goes along with the data biography, that this idea of producing meaning from data, this is a messy process sometimes. And I'm not advocating against like not cleaning up data, but in the process of learning about data, it's okay to learn about the complexity of the meaning-making process from data. So creating data is a messy process. When do you get your categories right? Do you have your schema correct? Categorizing data, analyzing data, all of these things, these are messy processes. I think we can focus more sort of on the process side. So this is a really amazing activity that Rahul is right here. So if you have any questions about it, you can talk to him about. He and his wife run an organization called Data Therapy, where they work with community-based organizations and they help them with their own data. So often, nonprofit and community organizations have all this data, and they don't necessarily know what to do, how to process it, how to make meaning from it. And so they do an activity called the Data Sculptures activity, which actually has people using very super low-tech crafting materials as a way of starting to visualize and tell stories about their data sets. But the main thing here is it gets people talking, and it gets people working with their hands and unintimidated by, something like data analysis. Sounds very complicated, but when you do it with googly eyes and pom-poms, it's a little less intimidating. And then here, I love this example. This is from the Go Boston 2030 public engagement process. And this was, in my mind, a fabulous way of sort of not just opening a data set, but opening a data analysis process to a community conversation. And so what they did here, Go Boston 2030 was an initiative of the Department of Transportation for the city. And they were in the process of creating a transportation master plan for the city of Boston. They haven't done this for something like 20 or 30 years. But they wanted to do public engagement differently for this particular project. There's like, whenever we run, town meetings at City Hall at 5:30 p.m. at night in the basement, the only people that show up are the people that care about parking. And so we're getting this very limited subset to these public engagement meetings. And so they said, well, what if we run this as a more sort of open and creative process? What if we go to the people? And so they had all these creative tactics for collecting people's visions. They collected people's questions, citizen questions, and citizen ideas for consideration for what the city should do about transportation. And they did that by driving around in a truck. Around all different neighborhoods, all different locations in the city of Boston. But the reason I'm talking about it here is not for the data collection reason, but because in the analysis process, what they could have done is they could have taken the 8,000 pieces of open text and just handed that to their data analyst and been like, here, you figure it out. Tell us what it means. But they didn't do that. They didn't hand it over to the specialist. They actually said, okay, we as a community are going to actually go through the data analysis process together. So I think they had, let's say, 3 or 4 different meetings where they convened 75 to 100 leaders in the community from various different stakeholder positions. So that they were from, inside government, outside government, activists, policymakers, advocacy groups, all kind of neighborhood groups, all different folks, convened them at these small tables, and they actually scaffolded a facilitated process where people went through every single question and idea and whittled them down to help the city of Boston prioritize. And so this is sort of what I mean by making it messy. This is messy. This is not a super clean process, but there's something that's more important about this that we lose if you just hand the data to the data analyst, including the process. Okay. Fourth is, and this may apply for folks here. I don't know if anyone in the audience is building tools for data visualization or analysis or anything like that. But I think building learner-centered tools is really important. So one of the things that we're seeing in the tool space right now is there's a tremendous proliferation of tools to work with data. So yeah, the proliferation of open data, it's a great thing. But it also creates tremendous complexity for learners who are entering this space. So it's really hard to know which kind of tool to choose for a particular task, particularly when you don't know the real basic vocabulary when you're just getting started. And a lot of what the tools out there do in their service of trying to be helpful, they actually really prioritize just the creation of flashy graphics, and they don't help people understand what's actually going on behind the scenes. So great, you made a fancy network diagram, but you're unable to actually interpret what it is. I mean, you can show people and they'll be like, ooh, but you don't know what happened there, and you don't actually know what it's saying to you. So we run a website called netstories.org where we actually have students themselves do tool reviews so we can try to track some of this tool space. But then another thing that Rahul and I have written a paper about is around how we can go about what are some design principles for learner-centered tools. So we have been thinking about the tool space. So think about when you're in a tool like R or like Tableau or like Data Wrapper, Pictochart, any of those. We are thinking about those tools as informal learning spaces. So how does the tool itself scaffold a data literacy learning process? And so we developed these 4 principles of what makes for a learner-centered tool. And those are that it is focused, that it's guided, and it's inviting, and it's expandable. So I'll sort of describe what we mean by that. So in our tool, which is called databasics.io, one of the things that we noted is that there was a real gap in sort of the scaffolding of really basic terminology. There was a gap in the tool space of on-ramping tools that took people from the standpoint of really not knowing very much and got them to at least the point where they were ready to take a first step to do something. And that's sort of where data basic comes in. So this idea of focus means that it does one thing well. So a tool like Photoshop is not focused, but that's its power, right? It's not really a learning, it can be, I guess, sort of a learn. It's not really a learner-centric tool, right? Whereas a tool like Photoshop or like Tableau, those are your kitchen sink tools. Those are the tools that let you do almost everything and have a lot of flexibility and are not focused, but they're tools primarily for experts in a lot of ways. But a learner-centric tool is a focused tool. So in our data basic tool set, you can do one thing. Each tool is literally like a single web page that does one thing. So the word counter tool, you can either upload your own data or choose the sample data, and it literally just counts the words in sample data. It shows your results page. So there's sort of no mystery about what does this tool do. You don't open it up and there's this huge blank slate. Secondly, it's guided, and that comes through the standpoint of when you get the blank slate, you're looking like, oh, what do I do with this? But guided tools scaffold you through a process, and so that's here where when we launch these tools, they come with sample data, so you can just go count, and you'll have done something. You'll have produced something just by pressing count. Also, guidance means that you introduce terms, and hopefully they're the right terms. You don't dumb things down for users, but you introduce terms. So when we're using terms, we're using things bigrams. What is that? So you mouse over that, you get the definition. Trigrams, same thing. We're giving you a kind of critical vocabulary to take the next step. The inviting part, the tools that are inviting, they for a fun and inclusive environment. So it doesn't seem like an overly expert or overly technical system. Here we try to do that for aesthetics. So through sort of fun colors, primary colors that hopefully looks like something that kids can use, and indeed kids can use it and have used it. So it kind of invites you into the space rather than sort of pushing you away and presenting you with all sorts of fancy things that you don't understand. And then finally, the fourth criteria is this idea of it being expandable. So how does any given tool that you're using help you take the next step in a learning process? And here we try to do that where we have a little what's next section after you use the tool that says here's where you can go from here. Here's the place to move on. You're not going to live in the data basic universe, probably for even very long. There's quick getting started things, and then you're going to be off and running with something else. But so we see that actually the tools are really important in terms of the learning experience. Because so many, people get very fixated on tools, but if we can start to think of them in a more expanded way of being in a formal learning environment. Okay, finally, here actually has more to do with what we produce and what we ask learners to produce out of the data analysis process. So here, the pedagogical strategy is favoring creative and community-centered outputs over a kind of notion of purity and minimalism that I think a lot of us have probably inherited from Edward Tufte. How many people have heard of Edward Tufte? Okay. So Edward Tufte has done really pioneering work in the space of data visualization, but has this idea that charts should be very minimal. So yeah, even has a term for it, chart junk. So Edward Tufte will call this chart junk. And this was published in a news article. This was actually published right about the time that Tufte wrote his first book, The Visual Display of Quantitative Information. So he would call this chart junk because of all the superfluous stuff on it. So he would say it's junk because you don't need this doesn't need to be a monster. This could be a simple bar chart. These teeth, these inhibit the reader's ability to actually make sense of the numbers. Why does this turn into a dollar sign? What the heck? This thing is voting. This is all really superfluous information in the Tufte way. But recently, several scientific studies are showing what I think artists and designers already know through practice, which is that people like monsters better than they like bar charts. And I'm glad the scientists are showing that because it gives us license to beautiful monsters like this. But there has been actually a lot of research recently that's around how visual embellishment and novelty actually do they're both fun, but they also improve learning and retention so they basically improve the overall communication of data. And so maybe we need to challenge some of our received wisdom about the best ways to communicate with data. And then thinking too about who is your audience? How do you best communicate to a particular audience? And so artists and designers are doing this in really fun and amazing ways. And so again, I feel like Rahul should probably be up here with me because I'm showing so much of his work. This is what is called a data mural. So thinking about, okay, well, what happens when visualization hops off the screen and out into the physical real world? Well, maybe they look something like this. So one of the things that results from that process that I showed earlier, that process of working with different community organizations about their data, is that at the end, Rahul and Emily work with the organization to produce a data-driven story. So this is basically a giant infographic that they have worked with the community to represent their story. This is the Somerville Food Security Organization, and this is actually situated in a community garden. So it tells a data-driven story about the work that the organization is doing in the community in a really creative way. Similarly, during the election last year, I was working with a number of my students to teach them quantitative text analysis by analyzing political speech, but then they would write limericks from the political speech. So we were actually producing data visualization out of the most commonly spoken words from the different candidates. So kind of remixing political speech, creating poetry from a data analysis process. And so one of the terms, probably not many people have heard of it, but this is one of my favorite words now, is this term called data visceralization. This is not my word. This is from Kelly Dobson, formerly the head of RISD Digital Media. And so she talks about data visceralization as being the way to make data felt, a way to make data like kind of experiences of data. And so we're seeing a proliferation of artists who are actually doing performances of data or sculptures of data or creating quilts that are made of data. So thinking about what are these ways that data is being rendered as physical and into experience. And so just the last thing I'm going to show, and then we have some time for questions, is kind of visceralization of climate change data that I did with a colleague of mine named Andy Sutton. And so in this case, this came from us noticing the similarity of two maps. So this is the map of Boston in 1630. We'll sort of see where the coastline is here, because of course, like the Back Bay, the waterfront, a lot of easy, this was all filled in land. So they actually literally like trucked in gravel from Natick to make what we sort of know as downtown Boston there. But the thing that's weird is that this is eerily similar to projected sea level rise based on the worst case scenario of climate change. And so the places that we have filled in are the most vulnerable places in the current city landscape. And so we said, well, I mean, the images are striking, but what if we actually took people on a tour? What if we walked this future coastline in Boston? And so that's what we did. So we had basically a sort of tour group, and then we would stop along the way, and we had a ladder, and wherever the water was going to be at that particular point, the person speaking would speak at that height, and then we would continue on. And so then we had guest lectures by the head of the Boston Harbor Association, who produced a lot of important local scientific research about sea level rise. We had a policymaker, the former head of Energy and the Environment for Mayor Menino, and then we had a media scholar, Eric Gordon, who's the head of the Engagement Lab, to think about what does sea level rise mean, and what are people doing about it? How is Boston adapting? And as we walked, my colleague Andy Sutton's contribution was that people got to choose these messages for their hopes and fears and dreams for the future, and then they stenciled them onto the Boston Common at the end into a kind of timeline. So it was like this. And there, that's all of them. Okay, and so this is one project, but there's a number of other projects that are like this, sort of making sort of creative possibilities manifest from a data output process. So thinking about, there are many different ways one can communicate with data that are not, I'm a professor of data visualization, I love two-dimensional bar charts and things too. But there's all these other creative ways that we can think about. If we think about who is our audience and what do we really want to get out of it, we're able to go further. So simplifying pedagogical strategies. One last plug is that we do have a couple of projects in progress that are going on. So Rahul and I are working with nonprofit organizations to create a toolkit for them to create a data culture in their nonprofit. So think about how do you train folks across the organization to think creatively with data. And then the Engagement Lab and the Center for Civic Media are working on a MOOC for librarians about thanks, and I would love to get in touch with people, so please contact me, and I'd love to hear questions, discussion, feedback, whatever. Yeah.
The phosphorus thing that you ended with, is that documented and written up to the website?
I mean, the project is documented on our website, and then we have a book about it, actually, but I'd be happy to give you a book. If you want to give books to anyone else. But yes, we have a book that documents it, and actually, it's likely that project will be in the MIT Museum this fall, and show the history of it. So it might be made manifest in the room. So, yeah.
I'm one of the librarians at Roche Library. I'm curious to know if you've come across any tensions with the term literacy here in data. That's something that we struggle with in the library. I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
Not so far, but what kind of tension do you mean exactly? Like,
with the word literacy,
exactly. You mean in terms of like relating it to kind of reading and writing, or like who would be the?
Almost like the overuse of the term.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to the idea that there might be a better word. Like right now, I don't know what that would be, but I'm definitely open to that. Especially when you look at all those proliferating other literacies. But I think we do need to name it though. I mean, there's currently a huge gap in a lot of fields. I mean, certainly in K through 12 education, I don't think we're teaching about data enough. But even in other programs, teaching in arts and communication, school, and specifically in the journalism department right now, I feel like actually data literacy is so crucial. Maybe it's like the broader thing of information literacy as well. But with the sort of like so much information coming out, specifically data as sort of structured and systematic information, if people don't know how to work with that, they're at a significant disadvantage. So there does seem to be a need to name this, capacity to be able to work with, manage, verify, ascertain the sort of validity of these kind of different sources and things like that. We need a name, but I'm open to it. It might be a different name.
When you think about how people use data statistics, I know, can you visualize people in very underserved communities in rural areas? But how could you accomplish that?
Yeah, we specifically work with underserved communities yet, I would say. But I don't think people would have any issue. I mean, I think because the data sets that we use are very sort of fun and accessible. I think they're actually accessible on a wide range of age levels. I can totally see urban kids, youth of color, doing pop music lyric analyses and things like that. Where we haven't had a chance to go, sort of zooming back a little bit, one of the things that I see in the data literacy space is that there's a lot of these like small examples, and there's not a lot of sort of systematic, scaled solutions around data literacy. So there's a lot of experimentation, which is great. Like data basic is a great example of that, you know. But up to this point, like it's not like we've been able to roll out data basics systematically at like a huge level or something like that. That's driven by where do we go, where do we do workshops, where can we get grant money and things like this. I think there's a huge need for this kind of scaled, systematic approaches to data literacy in different sectors. Yeah.
With the data literacy, and maybe like with the example of Go Boston, do the general people that were approached know how to pinpoint what they want? Because one of the things is like if somebody comes up and asks you, maybe you don't know how to articulate in that moment the change you would want. Like, are there things that have more, I guess, like time to process the contribution?
Yeah. So in the Go Boston process, everyone in Boston has an opinion about transportation. If they had any problem collecting feedback. But you could, like, if you were stuck in the moment and didn't have a response right there and then, they had other mechanisms. So you could also submit on the website, and they got a lot of submissions over the website, which were long and sort of detailed responses about, like, here's what I would like to see. So there was always an option to do that there as well. Yeah.
I'm curious, so it seems like a really awesome thing people are doing with making like data analysis and sort of consumption of data more accessible. But what about the other end of like data collection and how to, I guess maybe you talked a little bit about how to make that process more inclusive, but also like how can citizens have a voice in like what their government is collecting about them or what corporations are collecting about them? Like, do you have thoughts on how to make that end of the data more inclusive, I guess?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I was just at a gathering about smart cities in Boston where we were talking about this kind of thing. And of course, the thing that's coming up with smart cities, this idea that we're going to have, you know, devices out in public space that are going to be seeing our faces, pictures of us, or they're going to be, I don't know, at one point I heard some crazy idea of like public temperature sensor where you're going to point the laser temperature thing at people and get their body temperature and stuff like that. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But all of these questions do bring up like, well, what data should we be collecting, and who gets to have access to that, and then who gets access to that information, and who knows how to do something with it. So I mean, I think there's so many compounded points where you really lose people. Starting from the standpoint of even just having the conversation about what data should we be collecting. And I do think there's some literacy aspect there because people often don't understand both how much and how little is being collected. So often when you ask people, I ask students all the time, kind of their attitudes towards data collection and digital information and things like this. Simultaneous, what I hear from them, that means simultaneous, like, oh, they know everything about me, which is like kind of a big brother thing, but then also I don't care sort of attitude. But I think there's some work to be done at educating folks on what actually is being collected and how it's being used, and the creative, this is kind of what I mean when we're talking about the state of culture, nonprofit actually. People are doing so many creative things with data, right? And these can be both lovely creative things, like works of art, but they can also be really scary creative things. So this is like the experiment where researchers were able to determine your sexuality on Facebook just by analyzing your friends' network, right? So you take data that's collected sort of for one purpose, but then you can use it to infer all of these other things. And so those are both like very creative things, but they're also potentially very scary things. And those are things that we need to build this kind of critical literacy about as a way of building towards the political conversation. Because you'll get things where people like, oh, we don't care, you know? But part of it is like you can't care if you don't actually know what's going on. And there's like not a lot of transparency or work being done to show what is legitimately going on and what are the both very creative and also really scary impacts. Sorry.
I was
really interested in the data biography part. And I think it's really, really important, but it's also very laborious. Do you have any thoughts about making that more realistic, or how you log in real time so that by the end you actually have a biography rather than like bringing your biases and looking back at the data and you can, well, I did everything right, so cool.
Yeah, I think you can do a lightweight version of that. The first thing to do is choose ethnographic, like go interview the people at City Hall who are doing parking ticket violations and all this. Would be awesome, actually. But no, I think a lightweight thing that I actually do in the classroom is I have people find out everything they can that's online about the data set. So just everywhere that it's listed, and then also looking up, like say they're doing, I don't know, food inspections in Boston or something, also doing kind of a media review to see like what the media reported on this particular food violations and stuff like that. So that's pretty quick. Students can do that, no problem. And then one of the things that make a requirement is that you actually have to call somebody and interview, like it could be brief, it could be 5 minutes, but you have to actually call them and talk to them, somebody who has a relationship to that data. So in the case of food inspections, for example, that could be the owner at City Hall. They're often very difficult to contact, but students have been able to do that in the past. But it could also be like a restaurant owner who has familiarity with the experience of being inspected by the city. And so they're able to provide a lot of context for like, well, what do they actually do? What do they look for? How long does an inspection take? How long does it take till they get their grade after that? And so thinking kind of creatively about what potential interviewees might be. Again, helps people take, I think, the first step toward understanding that this is not just like sort of decontextualized spreadsheet in the world. It's connected to all of these physical human practices. Yeah, maybe you do the light. Yeah.
I'm just curious about the results for the individuals of the 2030, Boston 2030 process that went through. I'm sure you got more interesting, useful data out of it, but how did the experience change how they thought about data?
I don't know. I mean, I was a participant in that process. I didn't design it or run it or anything like that. And I don't think they know, because I don't think they collected that information. So, but if you talk to somebody from the city, they might have some intuitive sense of how people felt afterwards. If I put on my critical hat of that project, I sort of love that project, but if I put on my critical hat, I would say, well, was it an extended sort of PR operation on behalf of the government where people sort of felt like they're included, but then say you had, I don't know, say 50% of the people were like, we really want a bike lane on Tremont Street. Are they going to get it? And are you going to be able to circle back with people to show them how their voice mattered in that process? Probably not. There's not really capacity to do that. So yeah, I think we don't really know, but I think that's like bringing up the impact on the person in the world.
This one of the things that I thought was very interesting myself, it sort of underlines this conversation, which is a technological change that made possible all that. So let's say relationships before were like, let's say, between a retailer and a consumer. I go to the store, buy a pair of sneakers, I go home, use it, whatever. The service is great, I'll come back, that sort of thing. But nowadays, because it is possible, that is a technological revolution, to acquire other information that was unseen before, in a continuous basis, and is to get that from the consumer, right? Then consumers become generators of all this other things. Why do I have to have that sneakers that measure my temperature? Right. Or how many steps I do, or this or that. Right. So, I mean, this existed, or maybe not existed, but it's a technological revolution that allows to collect all that data. Absolutely. And how much that data escaped our hands. Even when we wanted to keep it, it is the main corporations that allow transmission of the data. Right. Ultimately, have the hands of the speaker.
Yeah. Well, and I think, yes, totally. So I think you're absolutely right, that I think that, the reason we find ourselves in this situation is these technological advances. So we are able to, record like heart rate and walking data and like put it in all these places, and it's fast. Like I can very quickly look at my dashboard and things like that, whereas in the past, like just even storing data, on this scale would have required, a room. So there's the technological advancements, but I think you're right also to bring up this issue of who has the power, like who has the control of the data, and where does the data go? And I think these are huge questions, and sometimes in our, in a way, I tend to think about this as the open data era. Of course, like, most of the information being generated is totally closed, totally proprietary, totally inaccessible, and who has access to that? A lot of the investment of the large amount of resources that it takes to collect and store and analyze large amounts of data is done by corporations and, of course, the government. And so, again, I do think that is the power differential that undergirds all of this work. And so that's why it's important that we, as we teach about data, that we keep those power differentials kind of at the front of our time, because we have to teach people also to be critical thinkers about that ecosystem. Like, is that the right configuration? What would an alternate ecosystem of data look like? And I think it's important to have that conversation. Yeah.
How many of the programs that you've done, like say, will be and looking at things like the data modeling? Do you have any feeling as to whether that has made them more critical consumers of the rhetoric of data that are presented to them?
Yeah, I think definitely the place where I am able to see the most change is over the semester-long classes, obviously. But so students come in and then they'll actually often send things to the class, sort of unprompted, and say, oh, I noticed sort of this about this thing, like this news visualization was making certain things sound very big, when in fact, if you look at it, it's not, it's kind of rhetorically casting it as big when it's not big at all. Or they'll find things like, oh, I see that the y-axis has been cut off on this particular graphic. They start to definitely look at things with more of a skeptical, critical mindset and be aware of things. I think for sure. So it'd be great if we could sort of have a more rigorous definition of what those things are, and then measure them. This is part of where, like, I think data literacy can get as a field, be like really specific about what are those critical aspects of literacy, and just actually do a more systematic job. I know we're over time, so I don't want to keep you. I think we have one more question, otherwise I think we're all done. All right, thank you. Thank you.